Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
Hey gang, welcome to Weird Web Radio. This is your host, as always, Lonnie Scott. I want to wish you all a very, very special holiday that is my favorite. Happy Halloween. And to all my fellow pagans, witches, Wiccans, and druids, and every form of paganism out there, blessed Samhain. And that's for all of us in the Northern Hemisphere where I live too. And of course, for my fellow heathens, it is time to start that winter tide. And good luck with your all-far bloat. And of course, I recommend that everyone spend some time in Memento Mori. Look that up because it is important. It will remind you not only of your own death, but more importantly, it's great to live. And finally, I just want you all to enjoy this special treat from me. It is a specially chosen selection from the bonus portion typically reserved simply for the Patreon members. I chose this with great love in my heart and big smile on my face. And if you want to hear more like this, and remember what you're hearing is more typical to just the first time they come through, you'll have to go join the membership at weirdwebradio.com. Click join the membership or go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio. Thank you. Stay weird, my friends.
And it's bonus audio time. Jack Grayle, are you ready?
Absolutely, man.
All right. First question in Patreon for your first visit to the show, that insinuates there will be more, is what famous person's resting place do you most want to visit?
Famous place do I want to visit, did you say?
Most famous person's resting place you want to visit.
Oh.
He's got a dog in his face right now, folks.
Yeah, right.
A black one even.
Distracted by a black dog. He's just a very small one. That's a great question. I think, we have the grave of Vachel Lindsay, the poet in town. And I love taking walks there with my friends and stuff. But as far as a grave I'd never visited before, I don't know. I'd love to visit Charles Bradley's grave. The great soul singer Charles Bradley. He would. I saw him perform, and he only died I think it was 2 years ago. But he was he was a fantastic performer. I saw him in Chicago, and he had so much heart. He didn't break through till he was in his 50s, and then his career. He used to travel with James Brown, and when James Brown couldn't perform, Charles Bradley would perform as James Brown. He'd be the replacement. Can you imagine?
Kidding.
Yeah, you know how good he must have been to be a replacement for James Brown. And he would, but he was just a fantastic performer. I'll give you a link to post in the Patreon comments so people can see what I'm talking about. But I was really moved by him, especially when I learned that he only broke into his career in his 50s. He was a cook for almost his entire life. And then he just had a few short years of popularity before he passed away. And I always thought that was really moving because he was a wonderful performer. And it's a great reminder that it's never too late to break into the career or the path we love and that we've been called to, but that you have to make the most of it because there's no guarantee how long you'll get.
Right.
And I'd love to leave some flowers at his grave. He was an African-American performer, and he said he would hand out roses in the middle of his songs to the audience, and he would say things like he would hand out white roses and say, y'all need to love the white roses, and then he'd hand out yellow roses and say, and never forget the yellow roses. And then he said, but then folks, be sure you collect the black roses, and they'd hand out black roses to people too. It was fantastic. So I always wanted to leave a bouquet of roses on Charles Bradley's grave if I can figure out where it is.
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. You should definitely make a stop there. That's a really great story. When you visit a cemetery, let's say, do you have anything in particular that you do, any tradition that you follow when you get to the gates or visit a grave of anyone?
Oh, it's a great question. And the answer is yeah. We're lucky enough where I live. One of the biggest cemeteries in America is near it. And it's a beautiful, despite the country being very flat around here, as you know, there's this cemetery is this rolling area filled with oak trees and old graves, at least for the Midwest, lots of Civil War graves. And one of the graves is for a Civil War soldier who I believe used to be a slave. And they have a picture of him. And he was an African-American guy. And he's missing an arm. And he's in full uniform. And he fought for the Union. And every time I pass that grave, there's a row of coins left on top of it. And it's very clear that people are leaving gifts for this spirit, this soldier. And I always leave some coins too. And so do my friends when we walk past it. And it's gotten very familiar that we pass him. And to me, in my mind, he feels like the protector of the cemetery because he's the only grave I ever see that has coins left at it. And there's something about being able to see his face and see what he lost in the war and how far he came and how hard he fought, and to see how people, and it has nothing to do with anyone I know in town. And I thought I knew all the weird people. It's none of us. So it's cool to think there's other people out there that are engaging kind of either an ancestral practice or a hoodoo type practice or something. But we're not the only ones doing it, but it makes me happy to do it because then I feel like I'm part of kind of an unknown group, and that somehow he's kind of watching us as we wander around the cemetery. So I love doing that.
Yeah, I like that too. I'm very fond of leaving coins. That's my thing.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Before I enter, if I go to if I go to one of these places that are known as a haunted location,
Yeah.
I do it for sure there. And anytime I go to any place, if I'm going to investigate it or help folks out,
Yeah.
if I'm approaching it as a sorcerer walking into a haunting,
Yeah.
I always leave, and I don't know where this comes from. I know why I leave coins everywhere. I know what the reasons I have. I don't know, but I just had an intuition one time to leave 9 coins at the threshold for Hekate.
Really?
And I have done it ever since that first notion struck me years ago. Every time I go into a place as a sorcerer for a haunting, it's 9 coins at the doorway at the threshold for Hekate.
I love that. What a great I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to absolutely start. That's one of the best ideas I've heard in the longest time. I'm going to steal that tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. You're welcome to it.
That's fantastic, man. Is it different coins every time? Is it pennies? Like, what do you have? Is there any kind of regular?
That's the fun of it. It's just 9 coins. Now, I tend to
like they are. Okay.
I tend to like to leave pennies myself. If I have pennies, I leave pennies on graves all the time. I like pennies because I feel like of all the coins and keys to me are just so loaded with magical potential.
Yeah.
And rich history to it as well.
Yeah.
But for our coinage, pennies to me feel the most liminal because they're the forgotten one. They're
That's true.
Yeah, they're easily discarded. No one wants them. The people don't even notice them on the ground.
It's so true.
I had this whole thing. I wrote a post on an old Mystic Wicks forum. It was this internet online occult forum years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I called it Operation Bizarre. And I wrote up Operation Bizarre 2.0. It's on the blog at Weird Web Radio, folks, if you want to read it. But the general notion is to create some kind of sigil that attracts and builds up weird, strange, bizarre energy.
I love that idea. That's awesome.
And then put it on a penny and leave it somewhere where that is not associated with these kinds of things. And then watch over the coming weeks to see if you start to notice reports of hauntings or alien sightings or a Bigfoot or anything at all, you know, anything out of the norm, and see if you could have just, like we were talking about earlier, kind of reminding people. I don't think there's a need to rewild anything personally. I think it's more about reminding people to notice the wonderful energies around them all the time. I think that's the problem.
That is well put. That is well put.
Yeah. So that's my thing with coins and graves and whatnot.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. So what do you believe awaits us in the afterlife?
Boy, that's a good question. Here's what sometimes I think. Sometimes I think that we're sort of like that in the afterlife, we can re-experience anything we experienced in this life, but nothing new. And so what it means is, but we don't have to do it in real time or in order. So I think I have this weird intuition that in the afterlife, we can go backwards and forwards at any speed, like you would with an old VCR tape.
Yeah.
And either replay something at normal speed or go there and hit pause and just exist in that moment indefinitely. And I like that idea because it means that all the things you thought were lost to you in this life can be re-experienced just as fresh in the next one. But it also creates an obligation, if you think about it, to live as fully as possible in this life, to give yourself more options so you don't relive the same day. No one wants to go back to the VCR and you have, 100,000 days where you just watch Netflix and ate a hamburger. Like, what's the point? Why did you live to be 80 instead of, 29? Like it almost creates an obligation to do different things, to experience different stuff, to give yourself an option to interact with different people and to explore different states and different, and do different types of things just to give yourself the widest possible experience to choose from once your time is up. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. Right. So that's
I've not heard that one yet.
some people find that claustrophobic in the extreme, but I like the idea.
I don't know. I find that kind of fascinating. I mean, I've asked. I mean, this is episode 77, so I've asked 76 other people what they thought. I haven't had a consistent answer yet.
I guess that tells you something.
Yeah. Oh, just like we said, magic's pretty personal. Maybe the afterlife is too.
I think so.
Yeah,
so.
We'll all find out, or we won't. My point is not to worry about it. Just be curious.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Right. Do you have any plans for your physical remains upon death that are required by tradition or religion or anything like that, or just your own desire, what you think is right?
It's interesting. Years ago, I signed up a thing to give my body to science. I thought, I don't want to just prop up the funeral industry. It's ghoulish and unnecessary, and I don't want my family to be burdened by thousands and thousands of dollars of expense creating an airtight concrete chamber where I can slowly fall apart in. So I signed a card saying I give my body to science. But then, I don't know, two of my closest friends talked about wanting to be buried in this beautiful cemetery where we walk regularly. And I look around at how beautiful it is and all these rolling hills and these oaks and these beautiful graves and the different, quote, neighborhoods. There's a sort of a Jewish part of the cemetery and a Masonic part of the cemetery, and there's a kind of the ritzy version, and there's a bit of a sketchy version, and there's an Islamic corner, and there's kind of
great playground for sorcery.
Oh, absolutely. There's old Civil War graves that are in circles, a bunch of graves in circles surrounding a cannon or the pyramid of cannonballs, and there's some odd, these odd, graves that jut out of nowhere and stuff, and I think to myself, what a great place to wind up at, what a truly restful place. And with all the oaks in the fall, the leaves change color and the ground's like knee high and these beautiful leaves. And I think this would be a great place if you did have any sort of, remain at the place where you were laid to rest. It'd be far better to be here than in the slop bucket of some medical school. So it's been on my to-do list to revoke my give my body to science membership card for years. We'll see if I get on, actually manage to do it or whether, or whether I forget and wind up on the slab.
I'll turn folks off of the whole turn your body over to science thing. Noble thought. I mean, I'm sure some of them end up where they're supposed to go, but a local friend of mine, this had been 10 or 15 years ago now, and you'll have to get on the internet to find the case, but you find it, you will. His father died, and they dedicated his body to science, and it was all prearranged. Years go by, he gets a phone call from the FBI. Well, we found some of your father's remains. What do you mean you found them? There's apparently been some seedy going-ons with medical company who is taking bodies who were supposed to be donated to science, chopping them up for like limb donations and things like that. And somehow they were detected through causing through cancer cells that are still active and things like that, and causing diseases in people that shouldn't be causing diseases
Oh
with.
my
And
God. What?
and to my knowledge, it is still today an ongoing federal investigation.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I got to put that at the top of my to-do list then.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I the last thing in the world I want to be is preserved and embalmed and buried in some concrete whatnot.
Right.
I mean, there's organizations out there like the Good Death. They can help you arrange if you want to be buried like a natural burial decomposition.
Yeah, that's a good
kind of
option.
thing.
That's a good option.
I myself, I'm choosing cremation unless Illinois, if I'm assuming I'm still here, allows some of these other more green options to be done, you know, like decomposition in water, like high power water, things like that. If you're not familiar with Mortellus, I cannot recommend checking out the book they wrote called Do I Have to Wear Black? And it's all about helping people like us make sure we get the funeral we want and the things done with our remains that we want.
No kidding.
Yeah,
no
Mortellus
kidding. Very cool.
is a mortician and one of us, and on a mission to make sure that that we actually get what we want, our wishes are honored.
Wow.
So don't miss a chance to recommend their work.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Let's see. If you were going to build some sort of monument or work of art, see, you seem to be fond of these things, in honor of your influences or Hekate herself, like what would it be? Where might you put it? Why?
You know, that's a great question. And I don't, it really makes you wonder, because part of me thinks you immediately get this image of a woman standing there, but I think sometimes the more literal statues are, the less effective they are in a way. It's interesting to think, well, if you weren't going to portray Hekate, if I was going to do a monument to honor her, something like that, how could it be done if it wasn't just like a normal statue of a person? And I don't know. I do think that one interesting way to do it would be to have sort of some kind of double flame burning. You know how you got the eternal flame burning for the unknown soldier?
Yeah.
I think it'd be really something to have two flames maybe coming out of like a pool of water, where you could have sort of unobtrusively something piping up the flames so that there was a small spigot just above the pool with two flames. And you'd get that liminal thing. It would look like flames were coming out of the water, which would make people think, well, how could that be? And the contrast might help them consider that maybe the deity itself isn't one thing or the other, but the thing in between two opposites, or a way for two opposites to coexist in a way that you couldn't normally imagine, because how fire and water normally, of course, extinguish or evaporate each other.
Sure.
So if you could create a pool with two flames and say monument to Hekate, and maybe have it reflect something beautiful, even if it was just a tree or something, it would make people look at it and try to figure out what it was about. And just by trying to figure out what it was about, it might expand their mind a bit about something that could subtly incorporate opposites into itself.
Yeah, that's an image worth meditating on. I like it. Of course, it immediately brought to mind for me and the heathen surviving lore, what we call it, the Nordic creation myth that the Icelanders recorded. There was the fire of Muspelheim and the ice of Niflheim.
Oh,
and at some point, they came together in the great void between them called Gunungungup.
Oh, my God. That's amazing.
Their combination explodes into existence.
Yeah. That's amazing. What a great parallel. I totally see that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What a fun conversation we're having, Jack. This has been great. What else are we going to go to? Let's think of cinema. Are you much into like movies, TV shows, anything of that sort?
Well,
or would you prefer to go with fiction?
I do watch stuff. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
so is there something that references sorcery or Hekate or something within your realm of influence or influences and practice as a magical practitioner that you have seen portrayed in a scene or a movie or a show that you enjoyed? I'm not looking for something that you saw, oh wow, this is documentary level accuracy. I'm thinking resonated in a way that you liked how they took their turn at it.
yeah, I'd name two. I think um, one of them would be the movie A Dark Song, which it's about, supposedly it's about the Abramelin working, but it's not really. It doesn't follow it strictly, but it is about someone trying to contact an angel through ceremonial magic. And I like it because they incorporate a lot of tantric stuff just because it's beautifully visually, so it lends itself to the film. So it's not like a really strictly accurate picture of ceremonial magic, but what it does capture, because it shows this woman and this magician doing the rite over and over again over the course of 6 months, trying to have a breakthrough. And it captures some of the monotony of praxis and the frustration of it, or those moments of, and then they start to be these little moments of breakthrough, but they're small epiphanies in the natural world that keep you guessing. Like, is it really something from the supernatural, or is it just me projecting? Or if there is something, it's fleet, and it makes you second guess afterwards. Was that something, or was it just my imagination? It captures the uncertainty of the working, and then the suddenness of the breakthrough when it comes. So for me, there was a real truth in watching this. It's a good movie. It's well acted and made, but beyond that, it captured a truth about conjuration, which is the frustration of it and the difficulty sometimes of deciding whether it's working, and the sort of maddeningness of having to repeat stuff again and again, hoping for a breakthrough that never seems to come until it does. So I really did like the movie A Dark Song, and I thought it was worthwhile. I also liked there's an occult writer and artist, and he created he created a movie called Solve et Coagula, and it's of course Auriel Defenestrate Bascule. And I met Auriel, and he's a remarkable guy. But he created an amazing movie. It's really weird. It's non-linear. I've written a review of it elsewhere. It's very impressionistic, and it's got filled with sort of trance-like images and haunting, voiceovers, and there's strange glimpses of ritual nudity and all kinds of infernal landscapes and amazing scenes of him singing Orphic hymns in the caves of Sintra in Portugal. And it has a depiction of the head of Orpheus being ripped off. And it's got a scene that takes place in a Templar temple. And it has the special effects creating Baphomet out of the bodies of a nude people engaged in an orgy. It's absolutely mind-blowing and crazy and absolutely shockingly sensual and visceral. It's not a normal story with a beginning, middle, and end. It's more like a barrage of trance-like orgiastic images that point toward a mysterium about sort of creating wholeness through a sensual mystic paradigm. And it's called Solve et Coagula, and you can watch it for about $3. And anyone who Googles it, or Auriel Defenestrate Bascule, can find it. I'll give you the link if you want to post it when you post it.
I would love to watch it. Yeah.
It's a wacky ass movie. If I always tell people, if if seeing naked people, if seeing semen makes you cry, then you don't watch it. But anyone who wants to see something totally wild that's different from anything else they've seen, it's a work by a true occult genius and artist, Auriel Defenestrate Bascule, and it's worth checking out.
Yeah, it resonates with the PGM, right?
Oh, absolutely. These ecstatic states are all through the PGM.
That leads me to wonder, not a question I asked earlier, maybe I should have. Do you think if you could go back in time and meet the author of the PGM, you'd like them?
It's interesting to think, right? I do think Egyptian priests thought they were all that in a bag of chips. Egypt had a reputation of being the very center of magical knowledge. And Egyptian priests had a reputation of being, the most wise and connected of all the magicians. And even the Talmud says of when God created magic, he gave 9 parts of it to the Egyptians and let the last part be split among everyone else. So they just had this reputation for being the magical people who spoke the magical language, who had the magical culture, who understood magic and could do it, better than anyone, with maybe the slight exception of Chaldeans and their astrological lore. And so I would say if we met, he would inevitably turn his nose up at me, but he would take my money, and I'd gladly pay for it to have him do a working on my behalf. So we would get along, because I'd gladly be a client and kneel at his feet or her feet, because there were female Egyptian priests too.
Yeah, like, I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble are you in? Well, I traveled through time. I don't know how to get back.
Yeah, I can't get back.
Yeah, you people smell funny.
Sounds like a working to Kronos would be in order.
I think I've just got one more question for you. This is the one that I steal from Tim Ferriss. I always give him credit on, just in case the rare chance he may actually listen to my show. If you could have a billboard anywhere with anything on it, guaranteed to get your message out to millions or even billions of people, what would it say and why?
Wow. I think it'd say trust yourself. I think too many people are sucked into forms of spirituality that they're not really enthusiastic about, just because they're afraid to trust their own instincts. Mm-hmm. And I think if people did trust their own instincts, they'd be a little braver. And not just like, braver to worship Hekate, because that doesn't appeal to everyone, but braver in other ways, brave to consider the afterlife as not being a scary thing. It used to be 100 years ago, you go to a cemetery on a weekend and there'd be all kinds of families picnicking in the cemetery. It was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to be close to the people and their family that passed on. Nowadays, you go on a perfect afternoon, there's nobody there, massive cemetery, no one there. No one visits them anymore. No one likes to think about death or the afterlife or the people that passed on. So the people who do pass on, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, But I think if people weren't so frightened, if they trusted themselves a bit more, if they were, able to sort of lean into that discomfort, that they could actually discover some things that were remarkable, whatever type of things those were. Mm-hmm. And they might live fuller lives and enjoy themselves more.
I like it. Yeah, I think death has become far too sanitized. It's just not something people want to face anymore. So
yeah, right.
That's an interesting point to make. But trust yourself. I like it. Trust yourself. All right, that is it for the Patreon portion. Thank you for all the extra time you've given. This
thank
has
you.
been great.
Those are some of the best questions I've ever answered. Man, those are really fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. For everyone listening, as always, thank you for being a member of the Weird Web Radio family. And please, as a reminder, go tell your friends, your family, and even your familiars to come join us. Stay weird out there, my friends.